At 52, Thomas had built a real estate empire from nothing. His silver hair and weathered face told the story of countless sleepless nights and calculated risks that had paid off handsomely. But success had cost him dearly. His wife, Catherine, had passed away 3 years ago, leaving him alone to raise their 8-year-old son, Benjamin. Benjamin was a beautiful child with soft brown hair and thoughtful eyes that seemed to hold entire conversations. But he hadn't spoken a single word since his mother died. Specialists called it selective mutism, brought on by grief. They said to be patient, to give him time. Thomas had tried everything, therapists, specialists, different schools. Nothing worked. Every morning, Thomas would kneel beside Benjamin's bed and whisper, "Good morning, buddy. I love you." And every morning, Benjamin would smile and touch his father's cheek, but no words would come. It wore on Thomas in ways he didn't like to admit. Not because he loved his son any less, but because he felt helpless. What good was all his money if he couldn't help his own child? One Tuesday afternoon in late September, Thomas decided to take Benjamin out for lunch. They'd been cooped up in their big house all weekend, and Thomas thought a change of scenery might do them both good. He drove past the usual upscale restaurants and found himself pulling into the parking lot of Rosie's Diner, a cheerful little place with red vinyl, booths, and checkered floors that reminded him of his own childhood. Inside, the smell of coffee and homemade pie wrapped around them like a warm blanket. A waitress approached their booth, and Thomas felt something shift in the air. Her name tag read Elena. She looked to be in her late 20s with kind brown eyes and honey blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. There was something gentle about her presence, something genuine that you didn't find much anymore. "Well, hello there," she said, crouching down to Benjamin's eye level. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Thomas opened his mouth to answer for his son, as he always did, but Elena raised a gentle hand. "It's okay," she said softly. "We don't have to use words right now." She reached into her apron and pulled out a small notepad and a bright yellow sticky note. On it, she drew a simple smiley face. Then she handed the pencil to Benjamin. Thomas watched, hardly breathing, as his son took the pencil. Benjamin studied Elena's face for a long moment, then carefully drew his own smiley face on the pad. Elena's face lit up like sunrise. "That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with me." Over the next hour, something remarkable happened. Elena would stop by their table between serving other customers, each time bringing a new drawing or a simple game. She taught Benjamin to communicate using pictures. A hamburger meant he wanted lunch, a glass meant he was thirsty, a star meant something made him happy. Thomas sat there, his coffee growing cold, watching his son engage with someone in a way he hadn't since his mother passed. Benjamin's eyes sparkled. He was laughing, silently, but genuinely laughing. "How did you know to do this?" Thomas asked quietly when Elena brought their check. She smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I had a little brother who didn't speak for 2 years after our parents divorced. Sometimes words are too heavy to carry, but there are other ways to say what's in your heart." She paused, then added, "Your son has a lot to say, Mr. Mitchell. He's just waiting until the words feel safe again." Thomas felt his throat tighten. This young woman, working a modest job at a diner, had understood his son in an hour better than therapists who charged hundreds of dollars an hour. "Would you—" he started, then stopped. "Would you consider spending some time with Benjamin?" "I'd pay you, of course. Whatever you think is fair." Elena shook her head gently. "I don't want your money, Mr. Mitchell, but I'd be honored to be Benjamin's friend. I work here Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 7. You bring him by whenever you like. We'll draw and play and just be together. No pressure. No expectations." And so began the most unlikely friendship Thomas had ever witnessed. 3 times a week, Thomas and Benjamin would come to Rosie's Diner. Elena would take her breaks with them, sitting in their booth with her pad of paper and her gentle patience. She taught Benjamin sign language. She brought children's books and would read to him, letting him point to pictures when he wanted to speak. She celebrated every tiny step forward as if it were a miracle. Weeks turned into months. Thomas found himself looking forward to those visits almost as much as Benjamin did. There was something about Elena's presence that soothed his own wounded heart. She never pried into their past, never offered unsolicited advice. She simply showed up, day after day, with kindness that asked for nothing in return. One November afternoon, something in Thomas shifted. He realized that Elena probably struggled to make ends meet on a waitress's salary. He'd watched her carefully count her tips, seen her worn shoes, and the way she sometimes looked tired beyond her years. That evening, Thomas made some calls. He owned a small office building downtown that had a vacant storefront on the ground floor. It had been empty for months. By the next morning, he had a plan. When Thomas and Benjamin arrived at the diner on Tuesday, Thomas asked Elena if she could spare a few extra minutes. They stepped outside into the crisp autumn air. "Elena," he began, "I've been watching you with Benjamin, and with all your customers, really. You have a gift for making people feel seen and valued." She smiled, but looked a bit confused. "I want to offer you something," Thomas continued. "I have a property downtown, perfect location, lots of foot traffic. I'd like to set you up with your own restaurant. Not a diner, but a place where you could create exactly the kind of warm, welcoming space you've created for us these past months." Elena's eyes went wide. "Mr. Mitchell, I couldn't possibly—" "Please hear me out," he said gently. "This isn't charity. I've seen how you transform people's days. That's worth investing in. I'll front the startup costs, and you can pay me back from profits. No interest. Take as long as you need. Or, if you prefer, just think of me as a silent partner who believes in what you do." Tears filled Elena's eyes. "But why? Why would you do this?" Thomas's voice grew thick with emotion. "Because you gave me my son back. Not all at once, but piece by piece, day by day. You showed him, showed us both, that there are people in this world who give without counting the cost. You can't put a price on that, Elena." He paused, watching Benjamin through the diner window. His son was drawing at their usual booth, content and peaceful. "My wife used to say that kindness creates ripples we can't always see," Thomas continued. "You created ripples in our lives. Let me help you create ripples in others' lives, too." Elena wiped her eyes, laughing through her tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," Thomas replied. "That's all I ask." 3 weeks later, on a cold December morning, something extraordinary happened. Thomas and Benjamin were at the diner for what Elena said would be their last breakfast before she started work on her new restaurant. She was nervous but excited, constantly thanking Thomas even though he'd asked her to stop. As they ate pancakes, Benjamin suddenly put down his fork. He looked at Elena with those deep, thoughtful eyes. Then he looked at his father. Thomas saw something shift in his son's expression, a decision being made, a wall coming down. And then, so quietly it was almost a whisper, Benjamin spoke. "Thank you, Elena." 3 words. Simple and profound, the diner seemed to stop. Elena's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Thomas couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Benjamin spoke again, stronger now. "Thank you for being my friend." Thomas pulled his son into his arms, both of them crying, while Elena wrapped her arms around them both. Other customers in the diner began to applaud, though they didn't know what exactly they were celebrating. They just knew something beautiful had happened. The years that followed were good ones. Elena's restaurant, the Smiley Face Cafe, became a beloved fixture downtown. It was the kind of place where everyone felt welcome, where lonely people found community and hurting people found comfort. True to her nature, Elena hired staff who'd fallen on hard times, giving them second chances the way Thomas had given her one. Benjamin thrived. His words came slowly at first, then more freely. He never became a chatterbox. He remained a thoughtful, deliberate speaker who chose his words carefully. But he spoke, and that was everything. Thomas watched his son grow with a gratitude that never diminished. He and Elena became close friends, their lives intertwined through the simple act of showing up for each other. On the 5-year anniversary of the Smiley Face Cafe's opening, Benjamin, now 13 and thoughtful beyond his years, stood up at the celebration dinner to make a speech. "My mom used to tell me that angels don't always have wings," he said clearly, his voice steady. "Sometimes they wear aprons and draw smiley faces. Elena, You taught me that words are precious, but kindness speaks louder than anything. Thank you for teaching me to talk. Again. And for teaching my dad that the best investments aren't always measured in money. There wasn't a dry eye in the restaurant. Thomas looked around at the life they'd built, not just the three of them, but the community that had grown around Elena's simple kindness. He thought about that first day at Rosie's diner, when a young waitress had crouched down to his silent son's level and offered a yellow sticky note with a smiley face. Such a small gesture. Such enormous ripples. Your mother would have loved this, Thomas whispered to Benjamin, his arm around his son's shoulders. Benjamin smiled. That thoughtful, gentle smile that reminded Thomas so much of Catherine. She does, Dad. I'm sure she does. And in that moment, surrounded by love and laughter and the community they'd built together, Thomas Mitchell knew that the truest wealth wasn't in his bank account. It was in moments like these, in second chances, in kindness repaid, and in the voice of a boy who'd found his words again. Sometimes the greatest miracles come not from what we buy, but from what we give freely, and from having the wisdom to recognize an angel when she's standing right in front of us, wearing an apron and offering hope on a yellow sticky note.